Now the latest ITV News in the Calendar region with Katy, Rickitt and Michael Billington.
Good evening, welcome to ITV News. This is Monday night's calendar.
And here are tonight's main stories.
Tone down the hostility. A South Yorkshire MP appeals for calm in the political debate following the death of David Amess.
There's too much angry rhetoric, too much bile, obviously, and it leads to toxic, lethal outcomes. And that is what I think people should be focusing on now.
Going Green, a 5-day conference in Hull explores ways for the city to be cut carbon.
We just have a mindset change. We just want to look at what we're doing and question it and say, well, how can we make the planet that little bit better?
Breaking the mould, the story of South Yorkshire's first black police officer, now the subject of a new documentary.
And disposable or reusable, the perennial nappy challenge for parents is under the spotlight as figures show 3 billion disposable ones end up in landfill. First tonight, as tributes continue to be paid to MP Sir David Amess, who was stabbed to death last week at his constituency surgery, one of our region's MPs says a toxic atmosphere in politics needs to be toned down.
As politicians in our region review the way they go about their daily work, the issue of safety and security has gone back right to the top of their agenda. Our reporter Emma Hayward is in our Lincoln studio. Emma, the fallout from this tragedy has been far-reaching, hasn't it?
Well, Katy, it has been an extremely sombre day in Westminster. Many of our region's MPs knew Sir David Amess. They were his friend, they were his colleague, they campaigned alongside him, so a very difficult day. And the events of the last few days have really shone a light on the issue of MPs and security.
And you can't do background checks on people, as some people have said. You can't have necessarily a heavy right by you. It just doesn't work. What I do think is necessary is sort of tone down some of the hostility in politics across the spectrum, and I think that has created the last period quite a toxic atmosphere in politics. There's too much angry rhetoric, too much bile, obviously, and it leads to toxic, lethal outcomes.
And Emma, do people think actually more could be done to protect MPs?
Well, of course, 5 years ago, we were talking about the brutal murder of Joe Cox, saying never again. And now 5 years on, we're asking, how could this happen? Of course, it is a complex issue. How do you protect MPs? By their nature, they want to go and speak to their constituents, but they need to be able to do it safely. Lincolnshire Police says it is contacting MPs across Lincolnshire to discuss security arrangements. We've also as well been speaking to the Lincolnshire Police and Crime Commissioner.
It's not necessarily about increasing cost, it's about making sure that the venues that are used are the right venues, that the public can access members of parliament in the right way to keep them safe, the members of parliament safe. It isn't necessarily about man-marking our members of parliament with police officers. So we need to work with them to do what they want to do, which is be accessible to the public. But equally, it is important that our democratically elected representatives are safe.
Well, of course, there are many questions about security, but I also think many MPs will just want to reflect on the life of Sir David Amess today.
I'm sure they will. Thank you very much, Emma Hayward there in Lincoln.
Next, the East Yorkshire pilot charged in connection with the air crash which killed footballer Emiliano Sala has pleaded guilty to one of the charges which he was due to face at a Crown Court trial. David Henderson, who's 66 and from Hotham near Market Wheaton, shown here on the far left, admitted a charge of attempting to discharge a passenger without valid permission or authorisation. A trial at Cardiff Crown Court is due to start tomorrow, where Henderson faces another charge which relates to recruiting fellow pilot David Ibbotson from Crowle to fly the single-engine Piper Malibu from France to Cardiff Airport. Salah and Mr Ibbotson died after their plane crashed north of Guernsey in January 2019.
OK, next tonight, as the UK prepares to host the Global Climate Change Conference, COP26, Hull is playing host to the 5-day Waterline Summit, which aims to show why the world needs the Humber.
Yes, as a global leader in the renewable energy sector, the region wants some of its major decarbonisation projects to take the centre stage. The conference comes after last night's Earthshot Prize, supported by royalty and high-profile celebrities, which aims to find innovative solutions to the world's most serious environmental problems. Its winners received £1 million to develop ideas which could be taken up around the world.
Well, in a moment, we'll speak to organiser James Newman about how day one has gone. But first, Victoria Whittam spent the day in Hull to see what's being done on a smaller scale.
The carbon battle bus rolled into Hull today, rallying the troops to save the planet. It's the showpiece of this year's flagship Waterline Summit, a 5-day conference which aims to link innovative decarbonisation projects in the Humber to similar efforts across the world. As a leading light in renewable energy, East Yorkshire is already having a global influence, and a quick poll of the city's residents show many are embracing change.
I always teach my daughters to always put their rubbish in the right bins. So I always encourage that.
In Hull, I don't know about other places, you don't see many trees or anything like that. And I do know that when I go into the countryside, that is something I really enjoy looking at.
I do recycle a lot. In fact, my non-recycle bin only gets emptied once a month.
One speaker at today's summit says the cumulative impact of small changes implemented by lots of individuals can have a profound effect on the climate.
This is the reed beds, so it takes all the wastewater from the kitchen.
Urban Farm, rooted in Hull, is a small oasis built on former dockland. As an educational resource, they aim to inspire. They created this reed filter system when they realised they were priced out of a shop-bought solution.
We just have a mindset change. We just want to look at what we're doing and question it and say, well, how can we make the planet that little bit better? We've got somebody wanting to do some hydroponic work, and we'll say, yeah, let's go for it. Then we work together to try and enable that, and then other people get enthused with it as well.
It's not too overwhelming. I think that's the difficulty with the narrative, that it's so big and so awesome and so terrifying and so doomsladen. Can you make a difference? Well, actually, yes, you can. As an individual, you really can.
And whether you're an individual, a community project or big business, organisers say the Waterline event is a platform transforming environmental threat into opportunity. Victoria Whittam, ITV News, Hull.
Well, earlier I spoke to James Newman, who's chair of the Hull and East Yorkshire Local Enterprise Partnership and the organiser of the Waterline Summit, who told me about the focus of today's event.
The conference in Hull today has been about talking to the large businesses and the small businesses about how do they reduce their carbon footprint, and how do we move forward with new clean fuels, and how do we bring more investment into the Humber.
Well, you're stood next to the Road to Net Zero carbon battle bus in the background there. How can Hull contribute positively to lowering carbon emissions?
Well, it's not just Hull, it's the whole of the Humber. We are the largest cluster of emitters of carbon dioxide in the UK. And we also are very prone to floods, as you probably well know. The Humber is also the centre for a lot of the development on new clean fuels. So wind farms, biofuels, battery technology, hydrogen are all being done, and huge amounts of investment are coming into the Humber.
As you've already mentioned, the Humber region is one of the most at threat in the UK from the effects of climate change. To what extent does our region hold its own future in its hands?
Well, 100% it holds its own future, which is why we have been asking government to try and focus their investment on climate change into the Humber region, because not only are we part of the cause, then we are very much part of the solution. A lot does depend on the decisions taken at COP26 around policy and, of course, around funding. But there is a huge amount of enthusiasm here in the Humber around trying to reduce our carbon emissions, creating new fuels, reducing flood risk, and all the other benefits that come from looking at climate change in a serious manner.
OK, James Newman from the Hull and East Yorkshire Local Enterprise Partnership. Thanks very much indeed for joining us.
Next tonight, as many of us try to make small changes in our lives to live more sustainably, like, for example, switching to reusable shopping bags or coffee cups, we're being asked whether we'd also consider doing the same with nappies.
Yes, a growing number of parents say they want to be greener, and the government says it's currently looking into the environmental impact of both reusable and disposable nappies. Lauren Hall's been hearing from one South Yorkshire family who've opted for the more environmentally friendly route.
He's only 7 months old, but he may already be doing his bit for the environment. When it comes to nappies, this family from Sheffield opt for reusables rather than disposables.
The environment, I think it was something that was very much in the media around the time I was expecting my eldest in 2018. So we had a think and we thought, OK, what's out there? We Googled reusable nappies and we were incredibly overwhelmed by all the choice and the terminology out there, which was what led us to the nappy library. And that's how I ultimately ended up volunteering with them. But another big factor for us and for a lot of other families we find nowadays is cost.
There's a growing number of parents choosing reusable nappies.
They're sealed with Velcro. One size fits most babies.
This company makes cloth nappies and it's seen a huge rise in demand over the past few years.
We were listed last year in the 100 fastest growing companies in the UK, and you can see that throughout the industry. And I think for parents who walk down the aisles of supermarkets and pharmacies and look online, the availability of reusable nappies has never been greater, and that's because the demand is there.
That said, there's still plenty of demand for disposables. Here in the UK, around 3 billion disposable nappies end up in landfill each year. That's around 2 to 3% of all household waste. The body representing the disposable nappy industry says they are making improvements and that the alternatives still have an impact on the environment.
It's important to remember that both types of nappy carry an impact. Cloth nappies consume water and energy and detergent. Disposable nappies create waste. Over the last few decades, disposable nappy manufacturers have reduced the size of nappies, which means there's less waste, there's less raw materials, there's less plastics, transport and energy. And I think this combined with the fact that they are so easy to use, they work so well, they are the preferred choice of around 95% of parents.
It's certainly the nappy of choice for most families. We spoke to some of the parents at this playgroup to find out why.
I feel guilty about using them, yet it is my convenience that I use them.
I actually get biodegradable disposable nappies and I use cloth nappies as well.
Environmental issues are very important, increasingly so now. But I would say the difficulty as a parent is finding the time to do all that additional cleaning.
Disposable nappies are convenient and I wouldn't have any other way. No, sorry.
Research is now underway to assess the environmental impact of both reusable and disposable nappies. The results are due to be published later this year. And for some parents, it may mean a change of nappy at nappy changing time. Lauren Hall, ITV News.
Tell you what, it's nice to see kids doing something from the very get-go for the environment. Absolutely. And they get to wear funkier pants. I quite like some of the designs on these.
I know some very fashionable children in that report. Now stay with us because still to come, Mouldbreaker, the first black policeman in South Yorkshire, becomes the subject of a special documentary.
And we swap the warm, wet and windy weather for colder, clearer conditions as the week wears on. I'll have that all-important forecast.
The Air Accident Investigation Branch has confirmed an investigation has been launched after a helicopter was forced to land on Cleethorpes Beach last Friday. There were no injuries reported and it's understood there were 3 people on board, including the pilot. Damage to the rear section of the Jet Ranger could be seen clearly as it was towed away. The AAIB said it had begun to make inquiries into the cause of the accident.
Research has found 1 in 5 parents think their child's behaviour is worse now than before the pandemic, with parents more likely to say their child was now excessively gaming and refusing to do homework.
Well, in the UK, there are currently no online gaming regulations, but could we be following in the footsteps of China, who've banned playing online for under 18s to just 1 hour on Fridays, weekends and holidays in an attempt to combat gaming addiction? Ravneet Nandra has this one.
Press a few buttons and in a matter of seconds, you're playing against someone from across the world.
But in China, they think children are online for too long and are restricting them to an hour on Fridays, weekends and holidays.
There are some broadly shared concerns about the future of the young, the high stresses imposed on them by the education service, but also younger people might easily get addicted to online games.
Mental health charity Place to Be has found 20% of parents are likely to say their child is gaming more than before the pandemic. These students at Kelsey Primary School in Market Raisin in Lincolnshire are learning how to be safe online and how much is too much screen time.
I think it's a good idea if we limit the time, because I have a big brother and he's always on his phone or Xbox.
A good idea, because it's not very healthy to be online and it's better to be outside.
It's a good thing because you can spend more time with your family.
The UK government hasn't officially commented on China's new regulations, but they're unlikely to impose similar restrictions here. And there are things parents can do to work with children.
I think it's really important that they spend time getting, understanding, the games that their children play, and ideally getting involved and, and playing together. So this can give them a really good insight into the games the children are playing and what the children are getting from those games. And also as they play together, they can help them watch out for risks and teach them how to stay, safe online.
These young adults definitely want to avoid any gaming regulations. They play at this centre, which gives young people with additional needs the training to start a career in online gaming.
My favourite thing about it is just you get to play with so many different people that play video games from across the world.
It's the best way to make friends half the time when you can't exactly meet up with them in person.
I think people should be allowed the freedom to be expressive and play how they want.
Just to get away from that societal demand that's actually on them. And they're creating and connecting into communities and peer groups, which is massively important in any social development. So if we're going to remove that level of social development, I'd say that wouldn't be healthy. But we have to open up the dialogue and find out what's positive, what's negative, and then of course strike the balance.
Being online creates a unique community. Experts want parents and children to ultimately work together in order to be safe online. Ravneet Nandra, ITV News.
I can envisage thousands of parents now just physically removing their children from the games console. We also had a bit of a moment here because Michael felt very aged, didn't you? Because what was the last game you played?
Well, I think it was probably called Pong. I'm not sure how many people remember that, but I certainly think it dates me, doesn't it?
And I said Lemmings, so there you go. Moving on.
Okay, the ITV Evening News continues at 6:30. Here's a look at what's happening with Charlene White.
Coming up, tributes to the MP stabbed at his constituency surgery. Sir David Amos's family visited the church where he was killed, while MPs and Parliament fell silent before sharing emotional memories. Also ahead, England ordered to play a game behind closed doors after violence at the Euros final. And how the Netflix and chill generation are picking names for their kids. Join us for those stories and more from 6:30.
Thanks for that, Charlene. Now, next on the show, former South Yorkshire police officer Bill Thomas served at some of the most momentous events the force has had to deal with, such as the Hillsborough disaster and the miners' strike.
But what makes Bill's story even more remarkable is that he was the first black officer in South Yorkshire. Tonight, Bill's story is told in a new Channel 4 documentary, Yorkshire Cop, Police, Racism and Me. Here's Martin Fisher.
The writing on the wall says everything about how respected Bill Thomas is in this South Yorkshire community. But tonight's documentary takes him back to the start of his service and events like the miners' strike, as told by his filmmaker son, Alex.
On the 18th of June 1984, a violent confrontation erupted right here, known as the Battle of Orgreave, and Dad was at the epicentre of the battlefield. 12 gruelling months of the miners' strike left Britain more divided than ever.
We're not pickets anymore, we're prisoners in his own country.
That's my dad, right in the thick of it.
The film also highlights Bill's first-hand experience of police racism in the wake of rioting in Chapeltown, Leeds.
As I got to somewhere around here, I saw the police van, and then this policeman just appeared and just says, "Oi, where you going?" And just told him home. Next minute I'm in the van. So did he read your rights or anything? Or No, he didn't tell me nothing. I didn't know what the hell was happening. I've never had any involvement with police in my life.
Well, Bill chose to take on such attitudes by joining the force.
We did not have anybody within the force who looked like us and who had an understanding of what we are expecting. And it's like, what do? Do you sit there and do nothing? Or do you try and do something? And we're going to be better, we'll be more effective to be inside rather than being outside looking in.
In the 80s, it was a very different world. Like, language that was acceptable actually was that were deemed acceptable then are no longer tolerated now. So you're meant to just put up with it, really. Like, what seems very horrific to us now, you were told to get on with it. And if you couldn't get on with it, then you were in the wrong job.
So Bill became a trailblazer, working with the Black Police Association, seeing others join the force after him.
I was the 14th black officer to join South Yorkshire Police, so without people like Bill and coming together later on to help others that came after us, it was very important that he was amongst the first, and we learned from him.
I've been very, very proud of the fact that I have done the best I can and I've helped wherever I can. And what I believe in more strongly, I believe that us as black people do have a place in this country. That'd be my passing shot.
Yorkshire Cop, Police, Racism and Me airs tonight on Channel 4 at 10 p.m. Martin Fisher, ITV News.
Oh, real trailblazer, isn't he, Bill?
Yeah, look forward to that.
Time now for some sport.
For the love of the game. eBay sponsors ITV Regional Sports Reports.
And Iris here with us now, and it was a great weekend for the cycling, wasn't it, despite the rain?
It was indeed, Katy, as after 2 years of waiting, cycling fans across our region finally had something to shout about. This man in the middle, Rotherham's Ben Swift, retained his British Road Race title as the COVID-delayed National Championships returned to Lincoln, where a homegrown rider also stood at the top of the podium. A warning that Jonathan Brown's report does contain some flashing images.
After a year in which COVID drowned out any prospect of a national road race championships, a bit of drizzle was never going to stop the riders or the crowds coming out in force in Lincoln.
The atmosphere is really good, and yeah, it's just so nice to be able to do this again.
It's good to get out, just soak in the atmosphere.
It's just great to see the pros around here.
Tour de France legend Mark Cavendish and Rotherham's reigning champion Ben Swift were among the headline acts on Sunday. The elite road race is bringing 4 days of racing to a roaring climax. The famous Michael Gate climb and city centre cobbles formed part of a gruelling 12-kilometre course, repeated 8 times by the female road racers and 13 by the men. But the tricky conditions left some riders out in the cold. A blistering sprint up the final climb meant there were no such worries for Ben Swift, though, the South Yorkshireman retaining his national title.
It's a massive honour to have this jersey. For the local fans, I think in this community, Yorkshire, Lincolnshire and all the surrounding area, the cycling fans and the cycling community is absolutely massive. It makes a good atmosphere for the race.
The rain couldn't wash away the smile of Jo Tindley either.
I'm trying!
The Lincoln-based rider used to work at this pub beside the finish line, and on Friday she became National Criterium champion outside it.
It's pretty cool, yeah. Yeah, it's pretty cool. Yeah, it's. I think it's just nice. Obviously you didn't know where the Nationals were going to be this year, or even whether they were going to be held. So special, I think.
Now it's hoped watching cycling's return to form post-COVID after a 2-year hiatus for the annual Lincoln Grand Prix could signal a comeback for more public events.
It's a bit of a test event for the Christmas market because it's one of the first events that's had a big crowd around Lincoln, so it's actually paving the way for more events in Lincoln.
Look at the backdrop, look at how good it looks when you're here as well. It's a right old spectacle, and I think it helps Lincoln, and it certainly helps us as well.
So whether it's cheering on cycling royalty or simply embracing spectating in a crowd again, organisers hope this festival of sport can drive forward plans to bring more people together. Jonathan Brown, ITV News, Lincoln.
Time for a look back at the weekend's football action now, and Sheffield United and Rotherham were the big winners. But we start in the Premier League, where it's proving to be a difficult season for Leeds United. It was a long and difficult afternoon on the south coast for an injury-hit Leeds United. Southampton's Armando Broja finally broke the Whites' resistance in the second half to score the only goal of the game. Dan James came closest for Leeds, who failed to register a single shot on target. In the Championship, bringing on striker David McGoldrick proved a masterstroke from Sheffield United manager Slavica Jokanovic. With the Blades trailing to Stoke, the 33-year-old set up Lys Mousset to level things up at Bramall Lane, before scoring the winner himself in an impressive 13-minute cameo.
Things are coming together. I think we've got a style of play now which everybody understands and is committing to, and I think it's really starting to pay off. We're creating a lot of chances defensively. We're looking good as well. If we can just try and cut out little mistakes.
2 set pieces were the undoing of Hull City away at Huddersfield. After failing to deal with the initial cross, Tom Lees bundled in the first. Dwayne Holmes then curled in the Terriers' second, with Hull now just a point off the drop zone. Despite it being one of Barnsley's best performances of the season, they lost 1-0 to Reading, with the Tykes now winless in 10. In League One, Rotherham romped to victory at the New York Stadium as they beat Portsmouth 4-1. After scoring the opener, confidence was flowing through Michael Smith's veins as he scored his second with this back heel against his former club. Richard Wood's header and Ben Wild's strike rounded off an impressive afternoon's work. There was more than a touch of fortune in the way Lincoln took the lead against Charlton. Teddy Bishop's shot was parried onto Jaden Stockley, who inadvertently headed into his own net. Some defensive frailties of their own allowed Charlton to equalise before Regan Poole headed in the winner deep into added-on time. Goal difference keeps Sheffield Wednesday outside the playoff places despite squandering a 2-goal lead as they drew at Wimbledon. Doncaster stay bottom of League One after they lost 2-0 to Wickham. There were no winners from our region in League Two. Bradford twice threw away Leeds to draw with Bristol Rovers. Harrogate suffered their first defeat in a month as they went down to Colchester. Mansfield are still looking for their first win since August after losing away to Northampton. And Scunthorpe continue to prop up the table after 2 goals in 5 minutes condemned them to another defeat. And finally from me, it's congratulations to Matt Fitzpatrick, who won the Andalusia Masters yesterday. The Sheffield golfer overturned a 3-shot deficit to win his final round to finish top of the pile in Spain. It was an impressive display from the 27-year-old who didn't drop a shot as he took the lead in the final few holes to win his 7th major title on the European Tour. And it's quite an impressive trophy, that, isn't it?
Indeed, absolute beauty.
And
Talking of trophies.
Yeah,
you spotted something, haven't you?
I'm pretty sure that's a cobble from the streets that they rode down. I'm not sure they're going to see that as a positive momentum after that steep climb. Here's the weather now with Helen Flint.
Bringing you blue skies and sunshine. TUI sponsors ITV Yorkshire Weather.
Hello again, a very good evening to you. Well, autumnal spells of wet, windy weather coming through one after the other during the first portion of this week. But the one thing which hasn't caught up are those temperatures, exceptionally mild, if anything warm by day for this point in October, and of course indicated on the map by the yellow. But also notice all of these successive frontal systems throwing in a fair bit of wet weather, it has to be said, until a sharp gear change on Thursday when you can see the direction of our airflow shifts, this time a brisk northwesterly hammering it down, really bringing down the feel of our temperatures sharply. Also though, this coincides with spring tides, so we could well see some breach to North Sea coasts. Out there at the moment, well, any dampness starting to push its way eastwards. Behind it, a fair bit of moisture in the air, so some mist and murk developing overnight tonight. Fairly cloudy, and that'll push into southern spots later. But notice those minimum temperatures, just 14 degrees for some of us, only dropping by about a degree on where we have been today, and well above what we'd normally expect for this point in October. In fact, average is between around 5 and 8 degrees. So a bit of a muggy flavour by first thing on Tuesday morning. Again, a lot of cloud to start the day, and then quite quickly our next batch of heavy, persistent rainfall, really hammering it down through the first portion of the day. That'll generally move its way northwards as things progress, but really into the afternoon we could still see 1 or 2 damper spells, and you can see just how messy things are behind me as well. However, that's it. To southern spots especially, we may just get some cloud breaking up later and a bit of brightness here and there. All the while they're quite breezy across the board, and notice our temperatures still in their high teens. Bye-bye.
TUI sponsors ITV Yorkshire Weather.
That's it from us. Our next update at 10:50.
The national and international stories are coming up next with Charlene White.
But for now, from the team here on Calendar, thanks ever so much for watching, and we'll see you again soon.
See you tomorrow.